I watched this movie last night and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to sleep on this, so my reactions in my video are going to be a little bit more toned down and I'm not overly biased about how much I enjoyed this. Nah, I'm still willing to say this is probably going to be my favourite movie of the year. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Here we have the sequels to the original animated film Into the Spider-Verse, which actually came out quite a few years back now, but when it came out, that originally turned a lot of heads. A truly great story giving us their take on the multiverse, some great original artwork which represented different Spider-Man across multiple different universes, an introduction to a great new character, Miles Morales, and a soundtrack that was probably one of the best soundtracks of the decade. It's a movie that took a lot of people by surprise, so naturally, this one had a lot to live up to. Good fucking god, they crushed it. I genuinely feel like this might be one of my favourite comic book films of all time. And I'm saying that as a natural extension as a person that really enjoyed the first one as well. The first film very much breached us into this concept of Spider-Man across multiple different universes, and it's still one of the best stories about multiple universes I think there is out there. This one thankfully doesn't hold your hand through all of that again. This instead goes very much the other direction and spends the first half of the film focusing on the family dynamics of Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy. We see a lot of character growth between these two characters, and you're just constantly reminded with each variation of Spider-Man that you see that it's just a no-brainer why Spider-Man was just so many people's favourite superhero. The odds stacked up against them, the urge to do good despite the hurdles they have to overcome, and the sacrifices they have to make. And bouncing onto that last part, sacrifices, it's something we've seen now time and time again, and the writers of this film, Lord and Miller, they knew that, and they present us with this sacrifice, this dynamic, in a very refreshing way. I love the moral dilemma we're faced with here, and it's even better yet when Miles Morales rises above that. It's honestly making him one of my favourite comic book characters. Without giving away any spoilers, there are going to be some people that say this movie feels incomplete, and I kind of get where they're coming from with that, but I think the focus of this story here is the growth between Miles and Gwen, and that is very much serviced in this story. Obviously not just them as well, we got a bunch of different spider people that we meet. Miguel O'Hara, voiced by Oscar Isaac, is one of the big new characters in here, and god is he just so good in here. Imposing, intense, and I think there's a lot more to these characters that we've yet to see, and Oscar Isaac just absolutely crushes his voice acting here. In fact, all of the voice acting is really good in this film, and it's a shame that I'm just not going to be able to run down the list and compliment everyone. Otherwise we might be here for like 10 minutes. And we have a new bad guy in here too, called Spot, and I love the direction they went with this guy. The progression he makes as the film goes forward, it's great to see, to the point where he becomes almost terrifying to look at. And a lot of my words will sound very generic and vague, but it's because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. The other shout out I want to give as well is Hobie, also known as Spider-Punk, which is voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. This guy just oozes cool, man. Every line he says, every action he does, he just represents great social commentary and really represents that great British punk vibes from the Britpop era. Anytime he said something I was smiling, and he's definitely up there as one of my favourite characters in the film. And throughout the whole story, characters chime in at just the right times to give us a really healthy dose of comedy, drama and tension. The writing from Lord and Miller is incredible, and we really shouldn't be surprised by now either. Their portfolio is becoming very impressive. And also, just to touch on the artwork, fucking phenomenal. You could honestly pause this film at any time and that frame would be a masterpiece in its own right. We get a lot more watercolour in here as we dive more into Gwen's universe, and I love how they play with the colours, matching the emotions of the scene at the time, how mid-conversation we can shift from bright yellows to dark blues. Off the top of my head, there's also some Renaissance artwork as well representing one of the characters, and it was just ingenious. And the studio just maximises the possibilities that you can have with animation. Some of the transitions and the camera angles that you get in here, you just would never be able to replicate in live action. And it's always just great to see tens of art styles on screen at the same time, seamlessly blended together. You could pause at any time and you would just never find a Spider-Man that's just been half-assed. If you've seen the first, there's no doubt in anyone's minds that you're going to get a ton of cameos here, but again, they're used here to be icing on the cake. They're never the sole purpose of the story. The soundtrack as well is just banging, and I'm not even talking about the great song choices they have. The score itself does such a good job of elevating certain scenes to make them feel truly epic. I genuinely got goosebumps a couple of times throughout this film, and music played a great part in that. There's also an Indian Manhattan universe as well, and the music in that is just brilliant, blending the original familiar score with more of a feeling that caters towards Bollywood and Indian films. I'm generally not going to say much more because I think it's really easy to spoil some of the great parts in here. This is 100% worth seeing if you're a comic book fan. Even if animation isn't your thing, watching this you'd still be able to appreciate why this is worthy of an Oscar nomination. It's a 2.5-hour film, but honestly that time flew for me. However, there were a couple of kids behind me in the cinema, and they did ask a couple of questions throughout the film. I think they were getting lost on certain parts, and they also had to take multiple toilet breaks. So maybe just keep that in mind if you're planning to take young kids. But man, I really want to see this again. Part 3 comes out next year, and it's as good as the last 2 parts, then this could live up to be one of my favourite trilogies. So yeah, high praises in this one. That's Across the Spider-Verse. Have you seen it already? It came out last week, and if you have, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe and all that. And as always, stay tuned for more reviews on movies, anime and video games. Until next time guys, take care. Bye bye.